Welcome to 418, where we study the essence of astrology. Lesson 2, you are the center of the universe. You know astrology works, enough that you're studying it, right? In fact, that is how many people get interested in astrology. They notice that it works in some uncanny way, and then they become interested. Some such people even become astrologers. It's easy from there to just become absorbed in using astrology as a tool and experimenting with it. Not many people ask why or how astrology works, but in order to use astrology properly, it's good to know. Just like the people in auto shop who have to take a car engine apart and put it back together really know how their cars work. That undoubtedly makes them better mechanics. The first thing to understand about astrology is that it is very ancient, as old as conscious humankind itself. Our ancestors had no TV, no iPhones. After the sunset, there was nothing to do but sit around the cave or mud hut and connect with each other's feelings and, of course, look at the stars. The next part is best explained by borrowing someone else's story. You may have seen the movie Contact with Jodie Foster. It's based on a fictional book of the same name by Carl Sagan. Of course, Carl Sagan was no great lover of subjects like astrology, but he wrote a book that helps explain astrology very well. If you read the book, something very interesting happens in it that doesn't happen in the movie. You remember the concept of pi. It's a cool Stonehenge-looking symbol. It helps you find the area of a circle. You learned in your geometry class in high school that pi goes on forever as a sequence of apparently random numbers, on and on for infinity, at least as far as we can tell. In the book Contact, mathematicians keep calculating, and eventually they reach the end of pi. The last digits of pi contain a message from the aliens saying basically, hello, you have become smart enough to understand the universe we have created, and it's based on circles, etc. I think our own universe may be constructed very similarly, but it's not based on pi. I think our ancestors, with all of the time they spent staring at the stars and noticing the spontaneous images and feelings that arose in them, they figured it out already. At least they mostly figured it out, and they passed it down to us in the form of astrology. Our oldest ancestors knew astrology far back beyond written human history. We have cave paintings from 30,000 years ago, long before any human civilization. On these cave walls, our ancestors painted what they saw around them, lots of animals, including bulls. Today, as astrologers, we associate bulls with the sign of Taurus, and so apparently did our cave-dwelling ancestors, because in one cave painting, they painted the constellation of Taurus right on the bull's face, and other recognizable star clusters. That's how long that particular constellation has been associated with a bull. So from day one, our ancestors were paying attention to the stars and planets and connecting them to events here on Earth. They were doing what humans do well, noticing patterns. When people came down out of the forest and created the first civilization and the first writing, they brought the 360-degree circle with them. For them, inventing math was important because it would allow them to do better astrology. This is where we come from as human beings. We have connected our experiences to the stars the whole time our modern consciousness has been formed. As above, so below. There is that phrase again. Where does that phrase come from? It's so old that we really don't know. But the truth of it has been tested through people's experience for literally tens of thousands of years. That brings us to the other important point to understand about astrology. Astrology is subjective, not objective. To our modern minds, if we hear that something is not objective, the next thing we think is that it must be meaningless trash. Au contraire. An objective observer would see me sitting at my kitchen table doing this astrology lesson. They might be able to measure the length of my hair or how many decibels my music plays at. These are the kinds of scientific observations we are used to valuing in our culture. Subjectively, however, we get a different story. Subjectively, I know how the last thing I ate is settling in my stomach, what I might do next, how I feel about the day so far, and on and on. The subjective world is where all the richness of our life experience is. That is another key word to remember, experience. Astrology tells us what our subjective experience is. It can't really tell us what's going to happen, but it can tell us with uncanny accuracy how we're going to feel about what's going to happen. And yes, often from knowing what the experience will be like, we can extrapolate something about outer, quote unquote, objective events. Many people who love astrology and have studied it for years do not understand this nuance, and it's an important one. In astrology, everything is about your individual subjective viewpoint and how things feel from that viewpoint. Feel is another important word. I will explain more about this viewpoint next time because it leads into our first important and misunderstood by just about everyone concept in astrology. For now, it is enough to understand that your viewpoint creates a unique, subjective universe all around you. In fact, you are at the center of it. Remember that. You are at the center of it, and no one else experiences but you. You are surrounded by other people at the center of their subjective universes, which may overlap here and there with yours, thus the need for an objective world also. None of this is too different, is it, from the concept of living in a simulation, as many scientists believe we do, in some kind of shared world. Uncanny, isn't it, that our ancestors would come up with such a thing on their own? Thank you for coming. If you'd like to read more material, please go to 418astrology.substack.com. If you appreciate these videos, please like and subscribe. Thank you and see you next time.